Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of China Manufacturing Decoded, our podcast here at Sofist. This is episode 133, and today this is Renaud. I'm your host, and we have a returning guest, Clive Greenwood, an experienced manufacturing manager and quality and compliance consultant, who is on the call here. He's based in Suzhou in China, and today we're going to talk about a very special topic. How can companies assess the environmental impact of their productions in China? And we're going to talk about why it's becoming more necessary. What do Chinese manufacturers do or think about it, if anything? And how companies usually do to assess the environmental impact. This is becoming a bit of a trend. So there's been an acceleration in awareness in the consumer base, let's say, recently. And a lot of big brands show, okay, if you buy the iPhone 14, it's equivalent to 70 kilos of equivalent CO2 and yada, yada, yada. Okay. And you see more and more companies publishing these kinds of data, and especially when they think they are virtuous, right? And sometimes it's shocking people, like Lululemon, a garment brand selling to the relatively ecologically conscious consumers, sort of yoga pants and things like that. They came out with their own assessment of the impact of their products, and everybody was like, this is so bad. I can't even imagine. This is so bad. This is so polluting. It consumes so much water, electricity, releases so much waste into the environment and everything. So brands also have to be careful what they say, but this is really becoming a big trend. And then a lot of companies are wondering about that. And a lot more companies are going to get on that bandwagon, are going to start to work on it due to upcoming regulations. And that's why Clive, who's a specialist in this topic, is on the podcast today. He can share some light on this topic. Hey, Clive, how are you doing?
Hey, good morning. Well, thanks for having me back again with you. It's a pleasure to be back with you and all your viewers.
Great.
As we said earlier, to set the temperature of this, 3 lights coming down the tunnel. It's not into the tunnel. It's halfway down the tunnel and it's coming straight for you. That is what we're talking about today, guys. Awareness is one thing. I would say that the time for awareness has passed. Action is now needed.
Right. So tell us a little bit, what is that train? So let's look first at the regulations for putting products on the European Union market, because that's where things are the most advanced, right? So what is that train right there for people selling, companies selling products in the EU? Right.
So the actual regulation that we're looking at is called the ESPR. It's the Ecodesign and Sustainability Act. It's all part of an EU process called circularity. It was actually tabled before the European Commission on the 14th of July this year. So we were expecting it not to be tabled before the end of this year. It's already there.
Mm-hmm.
It's
right.
And it's not the most important thing here. It is not going to be a directive, as normal things start in Europe as a directive and then move to a regulation. This is started off as a regulation,
right?
Which means it's law.
Right, and we discussed this a bit in actually at length in some previous episodes. You were a guest and you were explaining this also. So at a very high level, basically it's a regulation that will force companies that buy products and put them in the EU market, or also make them in the EU anyway. The key is to put products for sale in the EU market. It will force companies to gather some data about the environmental impact of the product, take some actions about it, and we can talk about that, and also affix some labeling on all the products, so that it's very easy actually for customs and for market surveillance authorities to check and get the data and see if it's in compliance or not, right? And also
yes, exactly. Yes, that's the product passport.
Right, there might be some extra information for end consumers too, but this is not very clear yet in the small details.
I think in the details we are certain that this is, as was first mentioned, it is going to be consumer driven. There's a consumer driven directive, regulation, which gives the power of the purchaser or the individual shall we say, the information needed to make smart purchases. That will be, which basically comes onto the product passport. But the information that's gathered has to be now not just about, how this product started its life. It has to be also about how it ends its life.
Right. So it's the concept of the full life cycle of the product, right? It gets
correct.
The raw materials are extracted, they're processed, some manufacturing. The product is assembled, is shipped out, warehoused to another warehouse, distributed, kept in stores or shipped e-commerce. And then also, what about during the use? How much electricity is it going to consume, and so on. And then end of life, what happens? Is it just going to be sent to landfill, or is anything better going to happen, right?
Yeah, as I was talking to you earlier before we went on air, one of the questions I got when I was talking to a company, I said, well, what happens to your products after you've sold them? I said, not our problem.
Right.
When I explained that, well, yes, it is now, there was a complete and utter disbelief.
Right. How can they control? Right.
How can we try? How do we know? How do we know? I said, well, okay, this is what market surveillance is about. And it's what does that mean that we need to have people in Europe? Yep, pretty much so. Remember, your CE requirements are all now part and parcel of this. Yeah.
So as a manufacturer, let's say a manufacturer that designs products, do they have full control over what people do? Not really, obviously. However, they have a lot of influence, right? If they make it in a way that is easy to disassemble, so that some of the key parts can be recycled, and they know that these materials are actually recycled in the countries where the products are sold, because a lot of plastics, a lot of metals and so on are not recycled. But by designing the product in an environmentally conscious way, they have a lot of influence. They can make it much easier, right? However, if they make a product that nobody really wants to try and recycle, because it's just not economically possible, because it's so hard to break it and to open it and to extract things, and anyway, nothing here can really be recycled.
Then my read on this is that product would not be legally sold.
Right. At least that's the trend. That's the trend, right?
Well, that's the intention of the standard.
Yes, exactly. So the standard has some horizontal requirements, right? Meaning it's going to touch all the products. All the products are going to have a passport and things like that. Okay. What about the priorities? There are some categories that are
these categories are actually floating around a little bit. The number one priority was textiles, because that's the heaviest user of oils when you're making plastics using coats and the apparel. That was the one that was going to be targeted first. It seems that that's changed. Or shall we say, as of equal targeting, will be batteries, lithium-ion batteries. Now, I can share with you some of the figures which are astounding on lithium-ion. But if you look at the tier 1 type address, which will be textiles, batteries, building material, or construction material.
This is top 3.
There's your top 3. And holding up those top 3 are going to be consumer electronics. Now, we all know about the WEEE regulations and Roche and things like this. Well, all of this is going to be used as a framework for consumer electronics.
Yeah.
So if you understand that there is the general regulation, and those regulations are now going to be supported by the figure is now up to 30 new individual regulations by 2030 to support this.
Right, and that's just for lithium-ion batteries. Is that correct?
No, that's for everything.
Okay. So they're already planning.
They're already planning new regulations, up to 30 new regulations to come into effect by 2030.
Within the topic of eco-design and green manufacturing.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. So the way you see that is that most of these regulations, like there will be one for lithium-ion batteries, and then there's going to be another one for certain kinds of textiles, maybe another one for another kind of textiles, and then there's going to be one for like construction materials, etc. And at one point, they will have something broader about electronic products, let's say.
Yes, right. Yeah, if you think at the ESPR is going to be like an umbrella.
The eco-design regulation. Yeah.
The eco-design is going to be the umbrella. That's going to be setting the actual tone of the standards which are now going to be brought in. Now, these standards, from what I'm reading here, these standards are going to be linked as well to the CE certification system.
So, yeah. So anything, like machinery, low voltage products, radio emission, most electronic products, and so on and so forth.
I think the easiest way to say it is if it needs a CE certificate now, it's going to need this. Well,
everything will require, all the products will have to have a product passport and things like that, even without a CE mark, right? What you're saying is that there's going to be more and more stringent requirements, and then there would be
more and more regulation. Yes.
Right. And if you want your CE mark,
then you have to comply with this.
If a notified body, meaning a Bureau Veritas, TUV, one of these big companies that actually certify the products, they're called notified bodies when it comes to certifying for CE mark. Once one of these bodies is involved, they're going to actually request some documentation that proves that, some work has been done on that side. Otherwise, no CE mark. That's what you mean?
No, I mean that they have to prove compliance to the standard or no CE mark.
Yeah, it's a bit wider than that. Yes.
Yeah. It's if you throw back your view to when we changed over from EU MDD to EU MDR, there was this talk of the grandfather issues and all of this, and people were saying, well, what do we do now? Because it's now a regulation and there is this period. Well, we started talking about this, I believe, me and you, about a year ago.
Yeah, we recorded a podcast about that. It was, I think the title of the podcast was, if the EU MDR is the future of compliance, be afraid, or something like that. And
something like that. Yeah.
Just to give a bit of context to listeners, now we're mentioning a regulation for medical devices sold in the EU, and there used to be a medical device directive and another one more specific about in vitro medical devices, but let's keep it simple. There's a medical device directive, and that, of course, was going, a bit deeper than most of the other CE mark products, but there were a lot of fake documents, and it was not that tough, for made in China products to get this directive and actually not always be very safe or very effective. Okay, then
it wasn't effective. Period.
Oh, that directive was full of gaps and holes. Yeah, right. Yeah. So they upgraded it in a very, very serious and thorough manner with the EU MDR, Medical Device Regulation. And that regulation, it was announced in its final form in 2017. And a lot of people were like, whatever, it's fine. Let's see how it goes. Then 2020, it was supposed to come into place. And people were like, come on, with COVID, of course, this stuff is, okay.
So they delayed it for 1 year.
Right. They delayed for 1 year. They say, okay, this is really very, very, very special. Okay, we understand. Everybody has their mind somewhere else here. Okay, 1 year. And then people were saying, well, if I have the MDD and all the stuff I did for the MDD is fine. The notified body is just going to transform that into MDR, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually the notified bodies themselves, the Bureau Veritas, TUV, and so on, actually pushed the European Commission saying, well, a minute, guys, we're not ready. This regulation is totally another world.
Yeah, it's another planet. It's another planet.
It's another planet. It's huge. We need more time to get ready. And we need more time to train the auditors. We need more time to do this and that. And our clients are definitely not ready. And the EU said, sorry, it's been announced in 2017. You guys just have to do it. If it's not ready, well, the medical devices just won't get into the EU. That's it, period. So that's how serious they are with these kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that the difference is that over the years, and we've both worked in quality for a long time, and we know that the EU basically could get up on a Monday morning and not agree that it was Monday. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That seems to have changed. It's 180 degrees. I think the difference is now that everybody is waking up on a Monday and agreeing it's Monday and let's get to work.
Right. At least the Commission has much more power, it seems, and they want to go faster. Let's say it this way. And they're the ones pushing these regulations. So
yeah, and that's the point. The point that I'm trying to make here is that the naysayers that thinking it's never going to happen, it will happen. It's already happening.
Right. And this is not going to be pushed, brushed aside, put under the carpet, put in the cupboards, or no. This is coming. And if you sell products in the EU, you definitely have to look at it because it's coming in place in 2023, right? Do you remember the date?
Yes, it's the 21st of May 2023 to the 21st of May 2024. That is your grandfather period.
Yep. So May 2024, the products you put on the market have to be fully compliant. Okay. So we understand, okay, there's a big train coming. Everybody's going to have to make some changes to their labeling, to the information they collect and so on. Okay. And there's some product categories that will be higher on the list of priorities. Okay. And in these product categories, people really have to start working on it right now, right? So let's switch the focus. Okay. There's the train coming. What are people doing? And you've been talking to some Chinese manufacturers about these kinds of things. Do you have the feeling that they are aware of it? Do you have the feeling that they care about it?
The first question is, generally speaking, is what is that? We don't know. We don't care.
Yeah, that's simple, right?
That's simple. There is probably a belief, wrongly, that there will be some intergovernment negotiation.
Right.
Okay. It's not even falls into the unlikely bracket.
Right. Well, because a part of the intent of the Commission is actually to say, well, all this cheap crap that gets made in China, in Vietnam, in some other places, we just don't want it anymore, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
But apart from trying to sort of like raise product quality and things like this, it is much deeper. You can't put this, and you should not really attempt to put this into a geopolitical environment. This is much bigger. This is about a final realization of something which Al Gore said so many years ago.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. With the documentary, what was it? Inconvenient Truth?
Inconvenient Truth. Yeah, Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah, right.
I mean, if you want, I mean, as I said, before we started, I did some quick looking about one of the things which is going straight at the top of the list, which is the use of lithium-ion batteries. Now, the figures on this, 74% of lithium batteries is used in vehicles.
Right. Electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles, yeah. Automotive. 14% is used in ceramics and glass or building materials,
Mhm.
and 3% is used in lubricants. So now you can see why they're going to target automotive.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
All right. Then the global demand. Now, remember, we're actually talking here of a period during the worst of COVID, 2020-21.
Mm-hmm.
The global demand was $4.6 billion. It is expected by 2030 to $22.8 billion.
Oh yeah, I mean, all of the car companies are lining up electric vehicles, and some of them, most of them are basically planning to stop selling.
Normal aspirated engines. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the demand on how this is going and the value, shall we say, of the industry. The total value per annum is about $25 billion at the current rate. Now, we've got to take into account that during this period, there has been a slowdown in production caused by COVID.
Well, for electric vehicles, I'm not. Yeah, the trend might have been a bit, going up a bit more slowly, but definitely was exploding already. Yeah,
it was exploding, and it sort of like slowed down, and then it started to go back up again. So those figures can be a little bit skewed. Right. So the largest user, as I said, was automotive. Right. Now, there is talk about something which is called the recyclable tax, which they would impose on vehicle manufacturers that do not recycle their own batteries.
Right.
That brings us into another part of the regulation of the design as well, which is also about reuse through leasing and renting. So in other words, you buy the car, but you rent the battery. That ensures that the battery goes back to the manufacturer and is recycled in a safe way.
Right. Now, talking about eco-design, I mean, this is designing.
This is where it comes in.
The business model, so that the people who buy the cars are not likely to dump the batteries somewhere. They're much more likely to bring them back into a service center or something. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Because the safety issues alone when it comes to recycling of lithium-ion, okay? Landfill, as we said before, and that paper which I wrote, which if you want to make available on your website, you can do. Fire. Massive fire risk in landfill. And what that does, when these batteries are burning and the plastics, they release hydrofluoric acid into the groundwater. It's not very nice.
And that's a very, very scary chemical.
That's a very, very scary. If you don't know what that does, it actually eats your flesh.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
So, and China is processing most of that, right? Even though they are not the main extraction area. I think you told me it was Australia, number one.
Australia is the largest, yes. The total global recycling of lithium-ion, according to the Energy Economics Commission, the Centre for Energy Economics, the rate of recovery was between 1% and 3% globally.
Yeah, it's nothing, right? Yeah, the batteries are made, the battery cells are made, it's packed, it's put into a vehicle, sold to somebody, and then end of life, what happens? Nobody's really thinking about it. So it's an ecological disaster. I mean, let's say it this way.
Yeah.
And
if you look at the EU, the largest recycling centre is planned in Belgium. It's to open in 2024, or thereabouts. It's $525 million US, but it can only process 150,000 metric tons per year.
Right. Way to go.
Yeah. Which if you thought about the scale of the problem, okay, if you look at the scale of this problem, if you are making about 460 million metric tons per annum, you have to recycle 450 million metric tons. You would agree with that, yeah?
In theory, yeah, of course.
In theory, okay. The problem is that 450 is not million, it's billion.
Right. So that's why, in your mind...
That's why it's only 1 to 3%.
Right. And that's why the EU Commission is targeting that as a priority.
Yeah. It's a priority not only for a cost saving. As I say, the estimated value of recycling of lithium-ion batteries alone is somewhere in the region of $42 billion. That's the value of it.
Yeah.
That you're putting into landfill, notwithstanding the fact that you are generating a huge fire hazard and an ecological disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
The scale of economics is that the current cost of recycling makes it commercially prohibitive to recycle.
Right.
Which ends the tax.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it needs actually to be financed, yes, somehow by the manufacturer or through people leasing the batteries and then paying as they go, as they're using the car or something like that, right? But they want to find a way, yeah. So it's not just, okay, so it's going to be automotive first, but lithium-ion batteries, I mean, I have one in my phone, I have one in my iPad, I have one in my computer, I have one,
You have it everywhere.
So consumer electronics... If
you're using electronics, it's there.
Right. Yeah, consumer electronics are also going to be a target maybe in a few years down the road, right?
Yeah, because if you look at South America, is now the largest importer of electronic waste.
Right.
And there is only 9% is recycled by authorized people. The rest of it just gets chucked into a big hole somewhere. Right.
So consumer electronics are also, what do they call it? E-waste, right? Electronics waste.
E-waste, yeah, covered by the a regulation called WE and Roche. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Now,
so let's get back. So this is like people are becoming aware of that. The authorities are definitely getting aware of that. In the EU, there is a train that's already, getting to full speed soon and will address these issues like one by one, textile building materials and probably consumer electronics soon and so on. We're also talking, probably like Canada already has something. Australia, the new government seems to want to go in that general direction also.
Yes, the Australians actually want to take the lithium and turn it into the product instead of just mining the ore and shipping it out somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, they're like a colony, right? Just extracting raw materials, shipping it somewhere else where the value is added. Yeah, of course. But the governments will also want to do something about all that. And in the US, at one point, some of the states like California are going to step into this and also set their own regulations.
Certain states already do have imposed state legislation. Okay, but at this moment in time, there doesn't seem to be a unified approach in America. But that's changing, and I would expect that to change in November when we have the COP27 meeting.
Right. So that's the United Nations regular meeting. Yeah, where the countries.
Change.
Right. Countries come back and say, well, this is the situation and this is what we committed to and this is what we've done and this is what we commit to do in the next few years and so on, right? And every time it sort of gives a boost, it puts climate and loss of biodiversity and so on on the agenda, and it pushes these types of regulations. Yes. So that's the high level, that's the trend, right? We're going in that direction. Whatever happens, there's no way around it.
This is not stopping. I think we said that months ago when we first started talking about this.
Yes. So have you seen some importers who have some manufacturing in let's say in China or in Vietnam or India start to put pressure on their suppliers, and what are the first steps if they want to get ready for compliance?
Well, the first step that they need to do is the lifecycle assessment.
Yeah, get some information actually.
Yeah.
So actually, even before the lifecycle assessment,
well, they should have already done their assessment of their carbon footprint. This was a general requirement for quite some time now, years.
Under what regulation?
I would say if we looked at G7 nations, yes, that's all part of their business process now. But if you're looking at China actually has made huge strides forward, to be honest with you, in its cleanup of the environment.
Oh yes.
And I know it's quite common for people to knock China, but on this case, China's actually done a damn good job so far on what it was doing. It started off with the world's most polluted country. And, I used to wake up in the morning and the air was pink. Now you see a clear blue sky. If the weather's good, you've got a clear blue sky.
Right.
That change has been dramatic. It's one thing which you can clearly see. Also, the recycling of materials in China is a big business.
Yes.
It is a quite mature business as well.
Yeah, they take it quite seriously. Kids are regimented to doing it and putting it in the right bin and everything. And everywhere in all the compounds and the bonds, the security guards actually tell you, hey, no, this is plastic bottle. You're supposed to put it there.
Put it in this one.
That seriously, right?
Yes. So you've got to sort of like say, well, okay, well done, China, on this one. In fact, they are in front of quite a few countries, including some of the bigger countries as well. However, there is the thorny side which we need to address on this. And this is the requirement is going to be not just on the actual finished product. So let's be clear. The regulation and compliance to this standard will include your supply chain. Every component which goes into that product.
Right. Of course, because...
And that's where you need to start the assessment.
Yes, that's why it's called a life cycle assessment. So again, for listeners, it's the extraction of raw materials, it's all the processing that it goes through, and so on and so forth. And for a product like a phone, a mobile phone, it's astoundingly complex. I mean, you have so many different materials going into so many different types of processing in different countries. Some of these let's say, modules are so complicated. It takes a lot of efforts just to assess their impact, right? And then you have it as a final product, and then you ship it, and then people use it, and how much energy does it consume? Is it likely? Is it easy to repair if something breaks? Because otherwise it's thrown away way too early. Is it easy to change the battery? How long is it going to last? Is it really true that an iPhone is going to last you, 4 or 5 years? And then after that, what do you do with it? Can the manufacturer take it back? Is it easy to get it back to them? And so on and so forth.
Now, if you look about the mobile phone, okay, one of the part where the design side of this comes in is how do you make that battery last longer?
Oh yeah, yes.
Okay, before recharging. And then that knocks onto why does it use a lot of power? Because programs which are used on those phones are what we would call lazily wrote.
Right. Yes. So there's the operating system, obviously. And then there's the apps and the way. What about if some apps are in the background? Do they keep sort of being active or not? And the batteries. I mean, for the high-end phones and tablets and things like that, how many cycles can you go through until the battery can no longer have 80% of its original capacity? If you go, maybe low end, maybe 200-300 cycles is not bad already. Maybe, something better, 500. The best ones, maybe 800 cycles. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, the batteries do tend to fall off once they start passing. Once the electrons themselves are not at the same flow rates or at the same quantitative levels, the batteries do actually fall off very quickly.
Yeah.
So it will probably be good at 90% up to say 600, and then at 550 it's down to 80%, and so downwards. That's why.
Boom. Right.
Yeah. Now, there was days of old, if you remember, when your phone battery, you could interchange it. You could go out to the shop and buy a new one.
Right. Long time ago, huh?
Yeah. Long time ago, yes. Well, think about the new phones now and think that the eco-design requirement, shall we say, of that would be a return to that.
Right. And of course, there's a lot of mega trends here, right? The right for consumers to repair their own phones.
The right of repair, yeah.
Yeah, this has gone into law in the EU and the US. It doesn't mean you can do it in your garage, but at least what Apple has done, because they're quite careful with that, they don't want people to mess too much with their products, but they have released some guidelines for third-party repair shops, and they have a program for them to be qualified and things like that. So it's much easier to get the iPhone repaired here and there.
If you wanted to ask me, I would say that what they've done is a minimum to meet the standard.
Yeah. But at the same time, the design of the product on the iPhone 14, not 14 Pro, not 14 Plus, but iPhone 14, is a big redesign of the internals so that they actually can be open and dismantled and repaired much more easily. Right?
Yes, as like a modular approach.
Yeah, you can open it from the front or from the back, it's much easier for people to reach out the components that they need to replace, basically. So they are doing what they can, let's say, right?
But if you remember, if you look at most of the electronics or the portable electronics, going back 5 years, maybe 10 years, but your laptop had a removable battery which you could interchange. Now they don't.
Oh, yes. Well, again, there's a lot of trade-offs, right? And we could talk about that for a long time, but
the point that I'm making here is that it's not only about the recycling, it's that, you remember, in quality, we always say that you design in quality, you never inspect in quality. The same applies to this.
Yes.
You design in recyclability and circularity at the very, very start of the product.
Right. Oh, yes. The most important, I would say, is just, reliability and durability. Is it going to break very early, or can it actually go through a life of 3, 4, 5 years without getting broken?
Yes.
And then, if when it gets broken, it can be repaired, that's a nice bonus. If when it gets broken and just stops working or is out of fashion, people stop using it, if it can be returned somewhere and recycled, that's also a very nice bonus. But there are some, there's a trade-off here, right? And how much lithium and cobalt and all kinds of things like that does it, are needed to make it, and how much energy is needed to make these very nice aluminum bodies and things like that. Aluminum bodies, aluminum consumes like 6 times more.
We're trying to get the word that you're trying to get to here when it comes to sort of like phones is when phones stopped becoming a device for communication and started to become more of an apparel product.
More like fashion, yes.
More fashion, which brings us to what they call fast fashion.
Oh, yes, which is terrible, and which is definitely going to be targeted
on the top of the list.
Ecodesign regulation. right?
Yeah.
Because if something is designed to be worn like 2 or 3 times and look bad after 5 washing cycles, I mean, and is produced in a hurry without any regard for the environment in some relatively small factories around Guangzhou, shipped by air. Now that's a big one also. It's shipped by air because fashion has got to be there very fast, and it's sent e-commerce, and it's just worn 1, 2, 3 times, and they do their Instagram photos with it, and they're happy, and they put it somewhere in the closet, and then they throw it away. Well, that is a huge disaster, obviously, right?
Yes, it is going to be targeted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that will be targeted, and it will probably be taxed. In fact, probably taxed out of existence, as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
People have said, well, why textiles? Because most textiles are recycled. No, textiles used to be recycled before they were made from oil. Okay, when you started talking about the materials, such that are made into, say, sportswears and things like this, when you're using polyesters, well, okay, that is a plastic. It's made from oil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's also very, very difficult to recycle.
So polyester comes with a number of issues. Yeah, you get to extract that oil and process it, and you get to dye that fabric. And especially if you dye it in black or some very deep colors, wow, the amount of dyes you're going to use. Ouch! How much of that is going to be released in the local water system, right? And then it's shipped out, and it can be quite durable, I would say. But how much microplastic is it going to release into the rivers and all the water systems?
Finally, into the ocean.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at what Ocean 12 is doing, there was a survey which came out that said by 2030, there will be more microplastics in the sea than what there are fish.
Right. Yeah, we're going in that direction. Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So the question is, really, I suppose, if we haven't scared a company enough now, then they're clearly not listening. What can be done about it?
Right. Well, the very first step, as you mentioned, is actually assess the impact of the product also through the life cycle. And there's a tool for that, LCA, life cycle assessment.
Life cycle assessments, yeah.
Right. There are 2 ISO standards, one that specifies like the principles and the general requirements for doing it, and the other one that goes more into the details of how to do it. It's 14040 and 14044. But as we were mentioning just before the podcast, some people say before these ISO standards, 10 people were doing the assessment, they would get 10 different results, so vastly different results. Now, after the ISO standards, 10 people do it, they still get pretty different results. There's so many assumptions and decisions to be made when doing that kind of work. There's very severe limitations. Let's say it's got to be properly planned. Let's say this way.
It is. I mean, and we also need to note as well that the level of compliance auditors, shall we say, from the accreditation bodies is probably not to the level needed to A, help a company get there, and B, when they say that they get there, physically go and check that they are. This, from my point of view, working in compliance, is there is the law, and the law is not grey. When I see the words shall and shall not, then I take them what they are. They are not an assumption. My talking to some manufacturers over the past couple of weeks has been that it's not a case of how do we comply with this, it's how do we get round this.
Right. In China, you mean, right?
Yes.
As always.
As always. Now, when you say, well, there is no way around this, that is the disbelief that you find a lot. An awful lot of people just simply disbelieve that it's going to be enforced.
Right. Yeah. You're mentioning that because we're saying the first step is to actually assess the impact of your product or products, including manufacturing in China. You're going to have to ask your manufacturers a number of questions. You're going to need them to provide a lot of data about the energy use and so on and so forth, and what processes are involved and so on, what materials, etc., etc. And they're not very big fans of that, right? That's why you're saying if a buyer says, well, a regulation is coming, we get to have this data, otherwise we can no longer sell, they're not going to get great support from their Chinese suppliers. Is that what you mean?
What I mean is that the Chinese supplier will look at a way of trying to either not present the correct information, which allows you to make an assessment, or simply will not give it to you. Remember, one of the courses that sets one of the routes or the course that this is setting is that you've got to have complete transparency.
Well, yeah, to a point. I mean, if they mention
down to tier 3.
Yes, which in China, if you're not a huge company, so again, the example of Apple and so on should not be taken into account because, most companies are not in that situation on their market. If you haven't negotiated that from the start and you're not a huge company, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. Even tier 1 components, suppliers, so if I take my phone, where does the battery come from? Where does the display come from? Where does the casing come from? And so on.
That's it. Then you're fine.
Okay. That's tier 1. It's already very hard sometimes to get that information. Okay. Without the identification of the suppliers. Now, if they say supplier A, supplier B, supplier C, supplier D, for that, for the purpose of the assessment, that's probably okay. But then probably if you look, okay, so the display, so that's supplier A, but I want to know what goes into that display. I ask them for like supplier A1, A2, A3, what do they provide that they assemble together?
Yeah.
Are they going to get that information? Right?
I think we both know the answer to that one, but if anybody has not dealt with directly with Chinese suppliers or Chinese buyers or sellers or anybody, the answer is that they treat their supply chain as a state secret.
Right. Oh, yes.
Well, I mean, we need to be very, very clear here. The standard and the regulation is going to be wrote does not mention, we cannot tell you because that's our commercial secret. I've read the proposal back to front, upside down. It never mentions the word maybe.
Right.
It uses the word shall.
Yeah.
The bottom of this is you either comply with the standard or you don't sell that product in Europe.
Right. Exactly. So if I'm the buyer of that mobile phone, I'm going to tell them, well, I need that information, otherwise I can no longer sell. There's going to be a date where this information is going to be due. Like, let's start to work on it. Even if the contract manufacturer is okay with that and say, okay, yeah, no problem. Let's say they buy the battery from a large battery manufacturer that doesn't care about them. That's like 20 times or 100 times bigger. You can say, oh, please, Mr. Battery Supplier, tell me where you get the cells or give me some information. What goes into it, how much
energy is it used, right. what the processing time was, yes. Where was it extracted?
Yes, and
that's what you need.
Battery supplier is not going to respond.
Well, they don't sell their batteries in Europe.
Well, maybe
that's the choice. That's the commercial choice that they don't want. Yes. Like I said, the standard isn't saying this isn't an option. There is no option here. We have to understand. We had the same arguments with medical devices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know we did. Me and you, we discussed this for hours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there was, well, then maybe they won't do it. And all of a sudden, okay, because the EU finally got some round ones, said, fine, you're not selling it here, period.
Right. And that's why it's very important to know about that now, because, send what we do for some of our clients who are in this situation, we send a survey, like a questionnaire, to the suppliers, and we see the level of response and the level of awareness that transpires. Okay. Then the importer knows, okay, this supplier, I cannot really count on them for this stuff. Either they're totally ignorant, or they're not going to be cooperative, or, they're very immature on that point. I can't really count on them for that. So
that's when the buyers have got to make a commercial decision. But that commercial decision is no longer going to be based purely on price.
Right. Yeah, compliance comes into play here. And these decisions need to be taken often 1, 2, 3 years in advance. So the next product you're going to develop, maybe you should not develop with these guys. Maybe you should develop it with some other guy, and then maybe you should do some of the sourcing yourself of the components. So you already have a direct relationship with the highest risk, let's say, component suppliers, and you ensure that they are aware of the regulations, and they are going to be able to provide the data that you would need. Right.
If we keep going back, and sorry for keep going back, because obviously, as you know, I come mainly from the area of medical devices. All of these arguments was put there before. Right. In China, they won't tell you. In China, they won't do this, or they won't do this, or anything. Okay, it was a simple, easy fix, and that easy fix was: if you do not do this, then you will not sell that product.
Right. Oh yeah. And
then all of a sudden the data was available.
So that medical device regulation is forcing the manufacturers to open up to an extent. I mean, they get to be able to show the design and development, the evolution of it, the different file versions and things like that. It's in 13485. It's also in the EU MDR. I mean, now there's no hiding from that, right? No. For example,
if you remember, one of the aspects which changed from MDD to MDR was the technical file.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, medical device file and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now think about the same thing is going to have to happen with your laptop computer.
Right. Yeah. On the product passport, some of the data will be required, and it's going to be more and more over time. And again, the customs officers and market surveillance authorities.
We have a date on this, by the way. We have a date when this is going to be done and dusted, and that's 2030. By 2030, your products are going to have a passport to enter the EU, and more regulation.
Yes,
to support that.
It's not just here's a passport, it's going to be what information goes in there. Who's the manufacturer? And we don't know yet what information will be visible to everybody, including consumers, competitors,
I think we have a good idea of what the information is going to be. It's going to be the energy use to build the product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the emissions or anything like this, or any harmful toxins, and the recommended disposal of the product.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, right. Yep, and how to maintain.
That we very much know is going to be part and parcel of it already.
Right. Yeah, we don't know in the details yet. So,
but I expect that we will know the details before the end of the year, this year.
Okay. So that it's coming soon. Okay.
Yeah. Good. Well, like I say, the latest it went before Parliament on the what was it? The 14th of July. The 14th of July this year.
Mm-hmm.
It was already there. So.
Yeah. Yes. Good. So now they're working on the specifics.
Yeah. Well, there will be a to and fro, as there always is, but I don't see it changing very much, because there is an enormous amount of information out on the internet as to how this is going. You cannot be blind to this.
Oh yes. No, the political pressure, pressure from consumers and so on, it is there definitely. Yes.
What would be the advice to people that have suddenly woken up? Would be, well, look at your products, talk to a compliance officer, ask questions of your design department.
Yes.
Have you considered this? And if the answer is no, as of today, I would suggest that you are behind the 8 ball.
Right. It doesn't mean in 1 or 2 years you can no longer sell it, but you're going to have. I think it does. Let's say there's going to be a combination of things, right? Consumers are going to be made aware that this is not an environmentally it was not designed in an environmentally conscious way for such and such manner. So it's going to sort of look bad if you want. There might be a tax, for example, for fast fashion and things like that. It can still be sold, but it's a big problem.
Well,
right?
Okay. It will not get us. The measurement that I've got here is 80% of the product must be recyclable.
Yeah, this is not horizontal. This is not on every kind of product, right? Because for some products is not applicable. It's for certain products. Yes. So the very specific requirements for lithium-ion batteries, textile products, building materials are going to come up in the next few months or a bit later. We're not really sure. But then when that comes up, people are gonna have, they might have a very short lead time to actually adjust, right? They're not going to be given 10 years.
No, they're not going to be even given 10 months. I would suggest that if we look at history, and I keep going to back when the realization that MDR was here, and the shock and horror was like, well, how do we comply with this? Will be the same effect as this, if not more, because it applies to more products.
Many more companies. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So hiding your head in the sand is probably the worst commercial decision that you could make.
Right. Yeah. Don't do it. Don't bet against new regulations from the EU Commission. If you sell a sizable portion of your products in the EU, you get to look into this.
But you could also as well guarantee that the same regulations and the same requirements will be in the US, Canada, Australia, UK. It's not part of UK, Europe now, but anyway, UK. The same watered down, if not almost identical, but less draconian, will probably be in South America.
Mm-hmm.
As I said to you, South America has become the dumping ground for electronic waste.
Yeah, right.
And they don't want any more. There was a meeting of the 12 South American nations only a couple of months ago that said we need to stop this. Right.
Yeah, so regulation is going to come up a little bit everywhere in a lot of developed countries, at least, for sure. Yes.
Yeah. So it's only the undeveloped countries where, if you're not careful, you are going to be free to sell your products. Right.
Right. Oh, well. You want to have a very optimistic outlook, don't talk to Clive. But that's...
No, I'm not. I'm not sales. I'm not a salesman. I'm a compliance officer. I mean,
Exactly.
It complies with the regulation or it doesn't.
Exactly. So, at least the listeners, you are warned. You know what's coming. It's a train. It's been gathering speed. It's going to hit your products sold in the EU first. There is a calendar. If you Google about the EU's Ecodesign regulation.
That's right. All you need to do is I went onto Google today, just before we came on, and I looked up ESPR, Google search ESPR.
Yeah, and we'll include some links to that. We wrote on that topic also in the show notes. But
and there's also my white paper, which I wrote as well, which obviously you have a copy of that one, which if anybody wants it, they can, I'm sure, download it from you.
Right. Yeah. They can just contact us and we'll send it to them. Yeah, I think we've given a pretty good overview of that train of bad news coming. I mean, actually, it's good news for people. It's good news for the planet, but it's bad news for people who have had their head down, getting new products, putting them on the market, dealing with the everyday issues of delays and quality and so on from their suppliers, and dealing with their distribution and dealing with all of this, but not thinking too much about, hey, how to remain compliant, how to actually make sure that this product, I can keep selling them for the next 5 or 10 years, right? This is really, really important. If you're in that situation, you need to get familiar with this upcoming regulation. I know big companies have had their, internal briefings about the upcoming regulation, but a lot of SMEs don't have access to that. And it's not like they can ask their business lawyer about it. It's new. Not so many people are aware of it, but there's a ton of information online already. Not into the small details because this is being discussed, and this will be hammered out and published as they go. But we already know that certain things are happening for sure, right? Have already been confirmed. So at the high level, everything we discussed today is pretty well confirmed. So yeah, a big thank you to Clive.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, for sharing on this topic, and thanks to the listeners, and stay tuned, and you will hear from us next week as usual. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.